Alright, first things first. What am I doing? First, 10 minutes of this episode today, I screwed up in the camera and I gotta kind of redo it, unfortunately, so here I go. Still not quite right. I'm looking forward to this bug, bacteria, whatever's going on to get the hell out of town. Now, quick note, I received a great package from our dear friend Molly. I got the book, Molly. I had to go to the post office today. Got it. The late, great Bobbie Short's book has apparently been published, first of 3 or something. But I've got the whole thing here. What else? Also had this other tidbit from you on the mutilations. The whole 9 yards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share real quick here the hair braid mention and the animal mutilations. Sorry, I'm not that familiar with myself. I haven't had where did I do with my frickin' readers? I haven't been. I mean, we've all heard about the cattle mutilations for years, right? I think there's a period of time when it was cattle mutilations and crop circles were the big scoop. Well, those spooky mystery shows, etc. back in the day. And I don't believe I know anyone firsthand who has had mutilation experiences on their rural private property ranches. But one thing mentioned here was the braided manes of horses. And I'm pretty sure I expressed my thoughts on that earlier, because I haven't looked in it. It hasn't caught too much attention from me, because I just kind of shrugged it off, maybe because I've had horses forever. And some of the photographs I did see were the exact same entanglements that we've all seen being horse owners, right? And it's kind of made me go, oh God, really? Seriously? A Sasquatch must have done it. But listen to this. I guess there's been some more in-depth investigation into that, some facts being shared. So anyways, Steve, being an old horsewoman, I had been interested in both the horse braiding issue and cattle mutilation for a few decades now. And one of the first mutilation cases was on a horse, and that got me digging into the subject. Linda Howe's response to my query may be of interest to you. Apparently, whoever or whatever does this awful stuff can work at a molecular level, removing internal organs without making an incision. The more you look into the stuff, the weirder it gets. Molly. P.S. Melba cut off a sabe braided section of her mare's mane and put it in a frame and sent it to me. Much too refined to be a witch's knot. I've combed out hundreds. All right, I'll take your word for it for sure, Molly. Excuse me. Hi, Molly. Thanks for appreciating my work. The braided mane is not a common feature of animal mutilations. It has occurred before in horse mutilations in southwestern England without any of us investigators understanding why. And as you know, law enforcement since 1979 has told me that the perpetrators of animal mutilations are creatures from outer space, and I agree. That's why lunar cycles and satanic rituals haven't been relevant to the investigations I have done. Especially when I have had veterinarians confirm that internal organs are bloodlessly removed from within the bodies of mutilated animals without any excisions on the surface of the body. As one medical doctor said to me in 1980, quote, "The only possibility is a technology that can extract specific molecules from within a body without interacting with the hair, the hide, the muscle, and everything else down to a specific organ to be molecularly extracted. All the best in spite of planetary chaos. Linda, there you go. Excuse me. What's up with that, right? It's a whole nother rabbit hole. Animal mutilations and animals being left to lay with the specific organs taken out without a cut. Holy shit. Right? Holy shit. That was very frustrating for me. If somebody or something killed my horses and I couldn't track them down and kill them myself, I'd be very, very frustrated. Now, I've read these first 2 chapters, behaviors. Now, where's Bobbie's encounter? I read it already. I gotta read it again. Hold on a second, you guys. Sorry. Oh, no, I took the tag off, didn't I? Okay, 1 second. Okay, so here we go. So I actually contacted Bobbie Short when I was in my 20s through her website, Bigfoot Encounters. And she replied a few times. Anyways, but I've never been familiar with her experiences or what got her into this. I've never heard her story ever of what she saw. And it's right here. And I'm going to share it with everybody. So this is what Molly did was she put the radio interview into text. And here it is with a drawing of what Bobbie saw. A couple of them, I believe. Gold. Let's go. Statement of Bobbie's encounters transcribed from Sasquatch Central. Note. Bobbie Short's involvement began with a personal experience which inspired an extensive collection of materials she posted to her website, Bigfoot Encounters. She has been well known in the field for years, but rarely appeared at conferences and Bigfoot gatherings. This interview is a rare one. Credit given to Billy Willard for getting her on his blog talk radio show Sasquatch Watch Radio. Bobbie. This is a quote from Bobbie. In 1985, I was a much younger nurse and dedicated, and I had always been a backpacker since the age of 6. We were up in Northern California and had backpacked in 3 days and had just crossed over the Smith River. And that morning I got up and stoked the fire a little bit and put the coffee on. I needed to empty my bladder, so I went off into the bushes. There was this small plateau of hip-deep ferns, beautiful place, just gorgeous. The sun was coming from my back. 2 columns of trees and the air was crisp. It was just a beautiful morning, and I was enjoying the walk as much as relieving myself. I stood up out of the ferns to adjust my Levi's, and I saw movement in my right peripheral vision, and I looked and I saw this image coming. I wasn't sure, and I finished with my britches and looked again. I had never heard the word Bigfoot, so you have to understand that I realized right quick that we were 3 days in and we hadn't seen anybody in 2 days, really. It was deep in the bush, and to see this woman coming at me with a prolific growth of hair, buck naked, it's just hard to wrap your mind around this. Interviewer. So it's definitely female then? You notice that right off the bat? Bobbie. Absolutely she was female. Did she seem aggressive, or was she just kind of interested in you and what you may have been doing? She wasn't the least bit interested in me. In hindsight, she was on a journey somewhere. She never broke stride. She came from my right, passed within, say, 10, 12 feet. I'm not good with feet. Maybe a little bit more from me. She was close enough that I could see her eyelashes. She passed off to my right in an uphill walk. She wasn't extraordinarily large in height, but she was bulky. She had these enormous shoulders. Her torso was barreled. She had no waist. She did not have perky breasts. They were hanging empty, nipples up. They moved with every step she took. These were enormous strides, by the way. She was going somewhere. Shit. But anyways, there's the photo. I might take a photo of it. Maybe I can zoom in on that and crop it out in the video. I don't have to mess around with taking a picture of it. But that's what she saw 10 to 12 feet away from her. Amazing. Alright, and then before I forget, I'll slip this in there too. But there is the more of a detailed drawing of the, quote, woman, more of a woman than anything she saw. Crazy. Anyway. These were normal stories, by the way. She was going somewhere. Where? I don't know, you know? But there she was. You end up asking yourself all kinds of things. At first I thought it was a joke that my backpackers were playing on me, which we were prone to do in those days, but nothing I saw made sense. I will say this, that nothing I saw brought to mind the word ape. Nothing. Not even her prolific growth of hair. It was hair, but it grew about her body in places that is more like the hair on a man's chest. It wasn't fur like a bear. It wasn't fur like a chimpanzee. It was hair. And there were even worn spots between her arms and the torso where her arms would rub against her body. Clearly worn away hair. She wasn't old. She was not well. She was not old. She was not well. And that was something I wrestled with. I was so intent on her face and other features that that got by me. But from her general appearance, she was old. She was scarred. She had an oval scar on her left shoulder. You might think she had been lanced with something. There was no hair on it. It was just a huge scar on her left shoulder right under the clavicle. Bobbie's second sighting. No way, another one. It is rather unremarkable, except that one was a male, and I had never seen a male before. He was a beaut. This is in Arizona, for those who keep record. The Arizona mountains above Prescott. I've been following a rancher with acreage there, and we went up there at one point on horseback. We're coming back along a canyon ridge, and this rancher and his 4 sons were in front of me. Actually, 2 sons in front of me and 2 horses behind me. The fellow in front of me said, 3 o'clock. Right quick, I looked across the canyon, maybe 50 yards, maybe 75. I'm not good with this, but anyway. They were close enough that I recognized right away what I was looking at. They were standing side by side when I first caught sight of them. She ducked into the tree line real quick like, and she was very pregnant, full term. He stayed out in the open and twiddled his fingers. What? We kept going. He just stood there. A great, big, huge fellow. There's something to reckon with if you want to be afraid. Holy shit. The interviewer. Yeah, wouldn't want to make him mad, right, Bobbie? I don't think I want to make him mad. I don't think I would want to mess with his lady friend either. Laughter. He was actually twiddling his thumbs, or were you just saying that? No, he was nervously messing with his fingers. It was hard for me to see what exactly was going on with his hands. I just know that his fingers were moving, and whatever he was doing, it looked like something nervously going on with his fingers. Maybe the fact that we were there, I don't know. It's hard to say. Note, she had compiled some of the best reports and information in the search for this undocumented creature on her website. Okay, there you go. 2 sightings, huh? Wow. Golden. I think we've read most of this book, haven't we? You have read the first 2 chapters on your site, all right. And then it gets into behavioral Sasquatch behavior. Wow, gold. All right, well, we might dive into this again, right, you guys? For sure I will. I'll try to make we'll take time out, I don't know, whenever, and we'll dive into Bobbie's book together here and make sure she's heard yet some more. That was pretty cool to hear her 2 experiences seeing them, right? And again, there is nothing ape-like about it at all. Nothing animal-like. Hair. There you go. This thing's still focused. Maybe. Possibly. Very cool. Thanks again, Molly. Absolutely appreciate it. And I will get your number to Richard right after I'm done here. Now, where am I going? I have over 50 emails in a folder to get a hold of 50 people so far to see who wants to share what they know on here with us. Alright, now where should I go here? There's a whole bunch unread. Let's try this one right here. Don't know what this is about. We're going to read it. Man, what a rough morning this morning was. Ooh. Very rough. Now, excuse me. Wondering? Trying to discern is the title of this email. Steve, I really appreciate your channel. Both sides. I've shared your arrow down the throat video with all my bow hunting friends. Thank you. I hope that this year's hunting season was a success for you in all sorts of ways. And unfortunately, I rushed my one shot at my cow elk and missed my opportunity. I have much yet to learn. Although due to my miss, I learned quite a few things this season. Unfortunately, the BS of the Sasquatch subject had muddled the waters so much, I don't know who to trust. Without knowing you personally, I find your story compelling and trustworthy. Thank you for your effort. If you would be willing, I need some help and would appreciate your perspective on a couple of things. As points of reference, I found that doctor's research compelling. It's all in point form here. Alright? I just don't like saying people's names that I don't want to promote. The 2012 Dr. Melba Ketchum's DNA report, unconvincing primarily due to the lack of peer review. You might want to relook over that again, because it's absolutely legitimate. Film reviews of Thinker Thunker on YouTube is intriguing. The BF Blah Blah O TV series is a farce. My perspective of Todd, what's his name, claims/films as pure showmanship. Les Stroud's personal stories and inquisitive agnosticism is very appealing, despite the Discovery series editorial choices. I am 56, I live in Colorado, Eastern Slope by Pikes Peak, a novice hunter, and I've been intrigued with Sasquatch for years, because I've never personally had any sort of experience. I would consider myself as a believing skeptic, as there is a history of sightings. There is a history of sightings around Pikes Peak. There's a group that wants to go poking about, looking for sign, etc. And I would like to go out, exploring and enjoying some new terrain. I am interested in personally finding sign if possible. Oh, that was one word. Typo. I am interested in personally finding sign if possible. I've seen so many people looking at shadows/shapes and photos, etc. and claim Bigfoot. And there's talking about crossed trees, X's, and broken trunks, etc. As if every one of those is proof of Sasquatch. Although I enjoy the outdoors, I am learning what is natural and expected. In your opinion, are tree breaks and X's really sign, or just coincidence/weird stuff, or a snow break? Excuse me, my opinion? I don't know. I'm right there with you. There's a lot of people that see two trees. Oh, there, look at that X. That's a great X. I'm not on board. But there is 100% for sure some weird anomalies, including logs. I'll call logs, or full-size trees, that you just can't explain away. You know, there's been a lot of trees, say 14-inch, something like this, arced right over and then pinned on top of some other stuff so it can't bend back up. Weird, intricate weaves with trees that big and bigger. And of course, the shit that I found, which was 4 or 5 trees. We're talking full frickin' logs, all on a rocky slope, wedged in there with all the tips going up to one tree on the side of a cliff. Hey, noisy. Take it easy on that bone. So there you go. Some for sure, others no. But then again, how many people have seen these hairy people making an X with branches, like seeing it go down? How do you personally discern between reality and fanciful imagination when it comes to sign? Fanciful imagination? I don't know, for me, I mean, if you see, there's too many different examples. Are you talking me seeing it personally, or are you seeing it online or somebody's photograph? I mean, some things there's no denying it. You know, you guys saw me, I found an alder tree, trunks about like that. It was last spring or something, middle of a logging road. And all the timber on that whole stretch road, not one branch is broken, and that thing was broken about 10 feet up, right in half, green. For me, that's like, okay, who did that? There's other blatant examples of trees being twisted, full-on twisted in the middle of nowhere, surrounding timber. So there's stuff that like that goes down that you just can't. Imagination definitely has got nothing to do with it. Do you feel that it is valid to personally determine the validity of others' claims if possible? I firmly believe we know with our gut, if you're in tune, if somebody is authentic or not. And when you know what, to go out of your way, what would you do? Who's the person? Who's the person that can say, it's like fact checkers. Do you know what I mean? Who's the human being that gets to put themselves in that position to say, I fact checked it? Right? Who's the person? I mean, what? Let's just say a lot of people previously, they were jealous of this channel sprouting up. They say he doesn't even check these people out. Even if I did, who gives a shit? So what? So Steve Isdall, who nobody's ever met, comes back and says, "Oh, I went and met the guy, so he's telling the truth." You know what I mean? But you can tell. I mean, I've made a living guiding strangers to me from all over the world, being plopped in the middle of nowhere with me, side by side with me on a slope. And one thing I can't tell you is body language. I mean, there's all sorts of different. If you're in person, I'll try to talk about this real quick. If you're in person talking to somebody, in person, if they can't square up with you like this, like sit square up, shoulder to shoulder, when they do that, they're comfortable with you, right? They look you in the eye. I notice when I have guided strangers, they don't know who I am, they're not sure about me, they don't feel safe with me yet, and I can tell, because I've done it so many times, by the body language. Reads you right away, they don't face you. They sit off to the side. And there's no way getting out of it. And I've slowly got in front of them. It's like cutting a cutting horse. I slowly get in front of them, and they'll go and face the other way. And they're usually guarded. Talking like this, like that, legs crossed, facing away. When somebody sits relaxed with their legs spread on the chair, like this, hands down, looking in the eye, then they're absolutely comfortable and they're being them. And they're being authentic. I hope I'm making sense. And then once you get to see the signs of whether or not somebody's comfortable with you by their body language, then you listen and see how they're speaking to you. And you can also listen to what the main impact of their story. I found when somebody's telling you what they saw, which I've heard so many hunting stories, fishing stories, Sasquatch stories, it's ridiculous. In first, in person, I'm a little groggy at you guys, I'm not smooth yet, but it's like when they're relaying their story, what always comes out and is repeating is the part of their experience that had the most impact. So, like, as an example, if in a fishing story, somebody has about 100, 200-pound halibut up beside the boat and they lose it. You should have seen the thing, it was huge. They're not going to say, we should have seen the spots on its back. They don't emphasize on the spots on the halibut. They emphasize on how huge it was right off the bat. That word comes out right off the bat, and that part of the story will come out numerous times as they're telling the tale. So when somebody's looking you in the eye, sharing with you what they saw in the woods standing upright, and the impact is usually, it was huge. It was absolutely huge. I was terrified. It was huge and I was terrified. It's going to come out right away in the delivery, and they're going to emphasize on those 2 points numerous times throughout their whole experience. They're not going to say, as an example, the first thing they say, they're not going to go, you should have seen his toenails. They hadn't been cut in years, ever. I don't think his toenails were ever cut ever before. See what I mean? They're not going to come out with that right off the bat. All right, the hair was way longer off of his forearms. They're not going to say that first. What was it like? What it looked like? Well, the hair was like, it just was longer on the forearms, but shorter on the back. It was crazy. It was huge. Right? I was absolutely terrified and scared of my life. Those are the main factors, the main impact from their sighting. I guess I'm getting carried away with myself here. But what I'm saying is, it's very easy to see when you're listening to somebody in front of them. It's very easy to see if they're bullshitting or not. Absolutely. When they're bullshitting, they can rarely keep eye contact with you at all. I don't even know if I'm answering the question. Where was I? Right? Hold on a minute. Do you feel that it is valid to personally determine the validity of others' claims if possible? So me, nope, I don't give a shit. If the question is more direct for the channel, I just don't give a shit. I don't care. And a lot of people think, they're just going to try to get one up on you from sending in a made up story. Well, it doesn't affect anybody here but the person that sends it in, and then they get labeled as a frickin' liar, and there's no returning from that. There's no returning. You're now an official bullshitter. You present yourself to the world online as a bullshitter. There's no going back. And your story's going to be read. People are going to take from what they will or leave it, and then it's gone. You know what I mean? But it's like, every single person needs to be heard. And the more we hear, they see the patterns. The patterns are huge. It's very easy, I find, it's very easy to tell if somebody's legitimate or not. Whether in person or reading his emails. But that's just me. I find it very easy, myself. Especially at this stage of the game. We've heard from so many people, right? Alright, sorry about the babble. What would you warn against, especially for a believing skeptic? What I warn against? I don't warn anybody of anything, but I would probably suggest that you not give any single person or group that position of authority when it comes to this topic, or life in general. That's a huge mistake for humans. Huge mistake. I would suggest every single human being get in tune with yourself, with your own true given senses and skills, and get in tune. Right? And then you can warn yourself with a multitude of things during this lifetime. But it's all encouraging. I just encourage people to get in tune with yourself, listen to yourself. You already know the answer to probably everything. It's just that you've been conditioned to not trust yourself. Don't listen to yourself and listen to that stranger up there because they're the authority. Wrong. That's why we're in the mess we're in right now, globally, right? Man, I'm really babbling today. What leads you to the conclusion that the Sasquatch is not just a great ape or other primate? If you've been here for any length of time, I don't even need to answer that one. I heard on some podcasts that your 300 Win mag would be trained and inferred in your statement, fired upon, on a dogman, if given a safe opportunity. Would you shoot a Sasquatch to prove their existence? Why or why not? Absolutely not. Because, okay, the dogman thing, I've said it numerous times. I'm looking out the window right now, and here's something in the window right here, 8 feet tall, built like a brick shithouse, with a frickin' wolf or German shepherd's head on it, and it's staring me down. Like I said numerous times before, in the real world, that's a threat. That's a threat, it's game on. Alright? Sure, at a quick glance, they look at you, take off. You stand there locked on me and you look like that, I'm putting holes in your head as fast as I can because I'm not going to give you the chance to bust into the full charge. I got you. You're staring at me. You're threatening me. Look, boom. I'm going to shoot that thing. A Sasquatch, one of these people, first off, they're a people, and they outclass us so fiercely. If I were to go and shoot one of these people, especially where I hang out, I would absolutely expect to have my head popped off of my shoulders way before I even remotely started to get out of that forest. They're never alone. Never alone. And if you want, it's like picking a fight. Like I've guided and hunted grizzly bears in the past. And it's like when you're about to do it, it's like picking a fight with the meanest, baddest killer out there. And you're intentionally picking a fight with it. However it turns out, it's going to be your, you own it. You did it. You brought it on, however it turns out, right? I'm babbling, aren't I? Man, it sucks being sick for a few days. Sorry, you guys, I'm not making sense today, but anyway. No. I think at this stage of the game, if they are not evil, which for the most part, I don't think they are at this stage of the game, but there's a few red flags for me, just because of how they interact with us, what they have done to numerous innocent people by the ways of tormenting them, terrorizing them, trying to lure kids out the window. That's not too cool. So I got a red flag for those actions, but for the most part, they don't seem to want to harm us. And from what we have learned about these people through all of the people here, we want to keep it that way. You want to keep it that way. Obviously, if you were to shoot one of these beings, if you shot one of these beings unprovoked, to prove it to who? That's another thing too. To prove it to who? Who? This is a question for all of you. Who do you need to prove this to? Who do you need to haul one in like a dead fish and go, there it is? Okay, now what? Now what? Do you know what I mean? The proof is available. The proof is everywhere. There's so much proof just in this channel, it's mind-boggling. But if you shoot one of these things unprovoked, I think that's probably going to be the moment your life changes for the worse. I actually had a guy whose uncle said he shot one, dropped it, native guy here, not far from here, shot it, dropped it, and he lived on the other side of what we call the hump. So he lives on the other side he lived somewhere on the other side of Mount Earlsmith on the eastern side of Vancouver Island. And he took off, went home thinking he did something real bad, and something beat the living shit out of his trailer. And the guy told me he saw it. It looked like a Coke can got crushed. And this guy ended up committing suicide. That's just one way of them getting... that's only one example of what I've heard of something bad coming with a shot at him, but... I wouldn't shoot one, man. Anyway, thank you so much for putting yourself and your thoughts out there. I truly appreciate it. Glenn Norberg. Okay, then. Glenn, there you go. I hope I answered your questions smoothly. I'm absolutely foggy between the ears right now. And not feeling very smooth. I'm sure I'll hear about it later if I'm actually sounding like a psycho today, but anyway. Moving along. Who's next? This is, what is this? This is two emails. Steve, thanks for forwarding this to me. Okay, so I got an email from a guy and I forwarded it to Scott Carpenter. All right, I copied this as unread from Scott. So here's the first email, then I'll read the second one, all right? Excuse me, Steve. I wanted to send you an email about my experiences with Sasquatch. Please don't hate me for the length of this email. Once I started typing, it was like I just had to purge. This is in no way all of my encounters. I have so many that most have become afterthoughts. So, first a little about me. My name is, please use the alias of, I gotta just call you John. While I'm not concerned with the ridicule I get from my friends, family, or the public, I work in an industry that requires me to pass intensive background checks and psychological evaluations. So I don't want the flack that a Google search might stir up. I am from South Carolina and currently live in North Carolina. Most of my encounters have taken place in South Carolina. I'm 45 years old. I've been an avid outdoorsman my entire life. I started fishing as soon as I could hold a fishing pole. I've been hunting since I was 10, mostly whitetail, wild boar, and turkey. When I was 17, I got into gold prospecting, and when I was 18, I started backpacking. All adventures that I still do regularly. Long story short, I'm in the woods 35 to 40 weekends a year, and I typically camp off-grid wherever I am when I'm out. In the last 30 years, I've spent thousands of nights camped in places where people just don't go. I never went out looking for these things, and I never wanted to see one. However, as the encounters have become more common, they have drawn me in, and I have recently, last 3 years, started looking for them and trying to learn more about them. I've never been affiliated with any research organizations, and none of my encounters have ever been reported to anyone other than my close friends. I personally have come to terms with these things being out there, and I try not to let it affect the things that I love to do. But I'd be lying if I said they don't dominate my thoughts when I'm out there. Said every one of us. I'm sharing this because there's a chance that telling about my encounters might help someone else come to terms with their own encounters. I know it seems kind of morbid, but the thought that makes me able to keep going back is, if they wanted me, they would already have me. I've been seeing and encountering these things since about 1993. So far, I've had 7 visual sightings ranging from 300 yards to as close as 30 feet, and an uncountable number of encounters without a sighting. Far too many to send you in a single email. For the last few years, the encounters happen almost every time I go out, especially if I'm solo. not as regularly when others are with me. You name it, and I've probably had it happen. Of my sightings, 4 of them have been while I had a firearm in my hand, but for various reasons was unable to shoot. Those reasons are: 1, regardless of whether I was holding a 7mm mag or a 45 ACP, I have always felt that I was undergunned to bring one down. 2, they look far too human. I couldn't convince myself that it wouldn't have been murder. Number 3, I've been around them long enough to know that they are rarely alone, and the one you see is usually not the closest one. Number 4, on one particular frightening encounter, my pistol jammed at the same time when I actually feared for my life and thought I might have to shoot in self-defense. Coincidence? I don't think so. Over the years, I've come to the conclusion that I cannot shoot one. I believe they are another type of human, and in my eye and God's, I think it would be murder. It would have to be a life or death situation to make me shoot one, and I suspect it would be my last act on this earth. In addition to the 7 sightings, I've heard them whoop, howl, scream, growl, grunt, whistle, knock, mimic other animals, including mimicking the known voices of friends who aren't present at the time. Holy shit. I'll read that one more time. Mimicking. Including mimicking the known voices of friends who aren't present at the time. Holy shit. I've even heard them speak the samurai chatter that you occasionally hear about. I've had them bluff charge, and I've had them escort me out of the woods. I've had things thrown at me, and I've had trees pushed over the trails that I used to walk into my deer stands while I was in my stand. I've been zapped with static charge, hair standing on end, feeling, and I've been zapped so hard that I hit my knees and couldn't breathe or otherwise function. I've experienced lost time, and I've been lost in places I know like the back of my own hand. And during these times, I've seen my compass and GPS units stop working. I've had them put thoughts directly in my head, and I'm fairly certain that paying attention to what they put in my head has saved me from being attacked by them in the following moments. I'm fairly confident that I've had them steal 3 deer that I shot before I was able to track them. All 3 left good blood trails, ending in a bedding site with no signs that deer ever left. Seasoned blood dogs turned away and run back to the truck. There's a 4th deer that was shot by a friend of mine that dropped in his tracks and then disappeared before he could walk to it, 80 yards away in open view. Puddle of blood at the kill site, no blood trail leaving. Again, dogs refused to track. You seem to be interested in the high strange encounters, so I will forego telling you about the more mundane stuff at this time. I know you've probably never heard anyone refer to any Sasquatch encounters mundane, but when you've experienced what I have, a single wood knock, a couple of whoops, or even a 9-foot-tall creature walking in the open 300 yards away or peeping around a tree at 50 yards just doesn't count for much. If you're interested in that stuff, I'll send you a Google Earth overlay that documents it in all of its boring glory. I'll stick to the highest strange encounters here, and you're still going to hate me for the length of this email. Feel free to break it up if you want to. I'll start with the first encounter that really effed with me. It was not my first encounter. As a matter of fact, when this happened, I had already had 2 visual sightings. This encounter happened while I was on a 10-day gold dredging trip. It would have been in June of 2016. I was solo and was camped 1.5 miles from the closest paved road, dredging in an area of the broad river that is nearly inaccessible. I've been there for 3 days. At 5 a.m. on day 4, I was awakened by a series of 5 loud whoops. They were unmistakable, and I knew exactly what they were without a doubt. They were just on the edge of my camp, maybe 50 or 100 yards away from my tent. They woke me from a sound sleep into instant terror. I immediately grabbed my .45 and cycled the action. Other than that, I was afraid to move, and I didn't move a muscle until it was well past daylight. This trip was then cut short when I broke my finger, smashed by a falling boulder in my underwater excavation. I had to leave on day 5. I did not hear or see anything else during that trip. I know that doesn't seem all bad, but there's a second story that happened in the same location on the same 10-day gold dredging trip that took place 1 year earlier in June 2015. Excuse me. And it really jacks up the weird/conspiracy vibe. It just wasn't recognized until the second encounter put the first into proper context. On that earlier trip, a friend and I were there dredging gold and camping on the riverbank. It was the second or third night we were there, and we were camping in hammocks separated by 10 or 12 feet with a campfire between us. At 2 a.m., we were awakened by the sound of a helicopter flying down the river. My first thought was that someone had seen me dredging in the river and had reported me, and I was now being harassed by some law enforcement agency. Dredging is perfectly legal in this location. The helicopter returned repeatedly for the rest of the night. The helicopter was unmarked and had no lights. I was and still am confident that they were either law enforcement or military. The riverbank in this location is 35 feet above the river. And at one point, the helicopter was in the river with the rotors level with the river. Sorry. The helicopter was in the river with the rotors level with the river bank, trying to look under the tree canopy to where we were. They obviously had seen us on a thermal camera. At another point, the helicopter dropped down into a clear cut on the other side of us between the river and the high ridge. This continued until I finally got up at daylight and waved at them while standing on an open spot on the river bank in my underwear. From 2 a.m. and all the next day, I kept waiting for someone to show up and question me about why I was there. At the time, I was convinced they were either interested in us because of the gold dredging, or they thought we might be babysitting a patch of weed growing on the riverbank. No one ever showed up, other than the helicopter. Looking back after the second encounter with the 5 whoops, I think the helicopter was either looking for the creatures, or knew they were in the area, and was trying to keep them away from us. I'll never know for sure exactly what was going on out there, but both encounters were frightening, and that was the only 2 times I camped anywhere on that property. The property was a 1,600-acre hunting lease that I held for 4 years. The activity got so bad on that property that I ended up abandoning the hunting lease in October 2018 while I still had 5 months access and 2.5 months of deer season left. I just couldn't take it anymore. I was afraid one of my kids or one of my club members was going to get hurt. All 5 club members agreed to walk away and not go back. We had each paid $1,000 for the 2018 hunting rights on that property. Wow, so those guys knew it was going down too, huh? The next encounter that I'm going to tell happened on the same hunting lease in the fall of 2017. In South Carolina, we were allowed to hunt wild boar and coyotes at night. We hunt the wild boar over electronically timed corn feeders. A friend and I had set up 2 feeders about 400 yards apart, and were hunting them for wild boar at night. The feeders had been set up running for about 5 months, and at this point I had had many encounters on this property. My friend had not. And as it began to get dark, we could both hear things being thrown at us. Some of the objects actually struck the feeders. And then things started grunting. Then these things started grunting, growling, whooping, and hollering. They started shaking the trees around us, close enough that we could see the trees moving in the canopy, but could not see the source of the shaking. At this point, fear is beginning to take a hold, and I really don't want to be there anymore. I thought it out, and I toughed it out until I just couldn't take it anymore. And I bailed out of my stand and head toward my friend. I made it about an hour after dark. And as I'm speed walking out, I can hear something on both sides of the dirt road following, just behind and beside me, 15 to 20 yards off to each side. It's dark, I don't have a flashlight, it's a full moon, and I can't see shit. About halfway to where my friend is, to where my friend is supposed to be located, I run into him walking down the road towards me. The first thing he says to me is, "Why are you effing with me in my stand? That's how people get shot." To which I replied, "Whoever's effing with you is also effing with me. I'm heading to the truck, you can keep up, or get left, but I ain't staying here." They followed us all the way to our trucks. Later I asked him why he had come out of his stand and walked away from his truck towards me. He said that he was afraid of what was between him and the truck. There was 2 of them that pushed him towards me, and 2 others that pushed me towards him. Then they pushed us both towards our trucks. Once we were at our trucks, things calmed down and the panic went away. And as we stood there talking, we began to hear them speaking to each other in what I now know is referred to as samurai chatter. They were maybe 60 or 80 yards away from us when they were doing this. We decided to leave. When we went back the next weekend, we found several 3-inch thick trees ripped out of the ground and several that were snapped off 4 to 5 feet off the ground. That night was the worst. But we were never able to hunt pig in the dark after that. We would get messed with every time we tried. My theory is that these things were hunting our feeders just like we were, and they would move us out of the way by any means necessary. The longer we tried to tough it out, the worse the encounters would get. My friend got baptized with fire when it comes to Sasquatch encounters. He went from skeptic to knower in one single evening. He got to skip right over that believer stage that most folks seem to get stuck in. The next encounter I'm going to tell you about happened in November 2018, and it's the only visual sighting that I'm going to include in this email. The rest are fairly boring and don't need to be fleshed out. This one, however, was simply horrifying. So, when we abandoned the 1,600-acre lease in October 2018, we started hunting public land. I'm not going to say where because there are currently no searchers looking in this area that I'm aware of. I was hunting on a point that ran down into a swamp. A couple weeks earlier, I'd seen an 8-footer peeping around a tree at me from about 50 yards away, and I had found a small structure overlooking a game trail junction, so I knew they were in the area. However, the area was completely void of sounds that could be associated with Sasquatch. I found this odd. Sounds are almost always the first thing that catch my attention. But for some reason, not this time. So, during the full moon in November, I decided that I was going to go deer hunt in the swamp on a Friday evening, then camp at the gate where the truck was parked, and then Saturday morning go duck hunting in the swamp, all solo. So I went deer hunting Friday evening with absolutely nothing happening. And after hunting, I drove to town to get dinner. I brought it back and ate while sitting in my truck at the gate. It was about 2 hours after dark by the time I got back from town and finished eating. I decided that I was going to walk down the access road and listen for Sasquatch sounds in the swamp before I set up my camp back at the gate. I took a flashlight, but did not use it due to the light from the full moon. I opted to leave my .44 mag in the truck because I didn't want to get accused of night hunting on public land. I walked about 100 yards down the road and started to feel that skin crawl, hair standing on end feeling. I thought about going back for the .44, but decided not to. I continued down the road to about 400 yards from the truck. And at this point, inside my head, I hear a thought in my own voice say, quote, "I'm going to smack this MFer in the back of the head," end quote. I knew this is not my own thought. There was no one else there for me to smack or to even consider smacking. I heard nothing move anywhere around me, and all the sounds being made were coming from me. I quickly turned around, and behind me, 30 feet up the road, was a Sasquatch. He was 8.5 feet tall and 4 feet wide at the shoulder. And when I turned around, he immediately bolted into the woods, tearing down everything in his path. I hauled ass back to my truck and drove 15 miles to the closest campground, where I slept in the front seat of my truck with the doors locked and my .44 laying on my chest. I went back the next morning after daylight and went duck hunting. I found where he had been standing when he bolted. The ground was tore up in a patch 9 by 12 inches, and I found the pine sapling he had been standing next to. It was a little over 8 feet, and he was a few inches taller and slightly behind the sapling. The following weekend, I found a black deflated metallic balloon tied to a tree next to where my truck had been parked. I think he may have left me a gift as a peace offering. I think I scared him more than he scared me. I continue to find new structures in this area, but I have no more sightings or close encounters. I still haven't heard any sounds coming from this area. I think it may have been a lone male that lives here, and he has no one to communicate with, so he remains silent. I found a couple of different groups that live a few miles away from this location, and they all make the normal noises that I have come to expect from these creatures. Maybe he's an outcast, or there's something wrong with him. Maybe he's deaf, who knows why it's different, but there is something there. All right, so I'm gonna chop that off there. This is a big email, all right, guys, and I gotta go in and get some food. But that's a lot to digest in one segment here, anyway, right? Now let me just put start here for tomorrow. So I'll lose my spot. And there you go. There you go. Gold. All gold. Especially from our beloved Molly. Thanks so much, Molly, and I will get your number into Richard. All right? I'll do that as soon as I get in the house. Gotta go in and see if I can get some food in me and keep it in me. And I'll be back tomorrow. Hopefully a little earlier in the day. I know a bunch of the regular viewers might have thought that we missed out on this today, but whatever. We always get it in eventually. Share my story at howtohunt.com, all right? That's where you get it shared. That's where you get the truth out, word for word, no matter what. Man, we brought home a weird bug, I'll tell you what. But I'll be back tomorrow.